there's going to be a guy with a red shirt and a black hat.
Okay, y'all, I know this is going to sound completely unhinged, but hear me out. The man with the red shirt and the black hat that she is talking about does exist. And I believe he, if we can really call them that, is a being of the earth. If you don't know what a being of the earth is, that would be FOLK or FAE, depending on your preference. I don't say those terms because I like to keep an energetic distance from those beings. Unless, of course, I'm called to do otherwise. Now, I saw this man a long time ago with a boy that I was dating at the time. This was back in high school. We were in the school way late because we had performed a play and the play was over and there was no one in the school besides us and the rest of the theater crew and the two moderators. Myself and my boyfriend were by ourselves at the end of a long hall. At the opposite end of the hall from where we were standing, we all of a sudden saw a tall man step into the corridor. He wore black pants, a red shirt, and in this case, it was not a black hat, but it looked like he had a very, very tall eraser head. This style of hair was not a common style for the time. But I mention it because while she says red shirt and black hat, sometimes things will look a little bit different, but it is in fact the same being. When this being stepped into the hallway, it was like this bubble of pressure surrounded both my boyfriend at the time and myself. It was like someone put the pause button on reality and also hit mute. I don't know if we could not talk and could not move, but we did neither. We looked dead at this particular being and it looked almost human, except once you really looked at it, the arms were a little bit too long, the fingers were a little bit too long, they were a little bit too tall, the clothes were off. It looked like someone who had tried to perform humanity had stepped into the human realm. And oddly, this wasn't frightening at all. When I looked at this being, I all of a sudden thought, oh, is this what they mean by a ghost? And then I thought, no, it's not a ghost, but it's also not human. And this also wasn't frightening, it was just understanding a frank truth. This being did not say anything to us and did not wave. It simply looked at us, then stepped away from the hall into a part of the school that they would not have been able to exit without a key. The entire place was locked down. When the being left our presence, we could move again, and we both tore off down the hall and looked into the space where the being should have been and could not get out of, but it wasn't there. That this being did not wave is important. 4 years later, that former boyfriend of mine died a very, very horrible death. So you might want to wave. Wants to manifest thinking and being different. I think you being aware that this isn't the healthiest for you doesn't make you feel good, and is perhaps not the healthiest way to go about your interpersonal relationships, is actually a massive part about manifesting a different way of being. You're already aware and being honest with yourself, which is great. A lot of people never get to that place. However, while I think it's great that you're being honest and accountable, I think you are being way hard on yourself. The language that you're using here, the way you're talking to yourself, is really harsh, and it is crossing a little bit over into violence, which I've been there, most of us have been there. And for whatever you've been through and survived, whether you're dealing with fixation on an SP or a favorite person, whatever it is, just know that whatever you're currently doing, it's likely extremely valid and normal for whatever you have been through and have had to survive. And while you're looking to change, it is okay to be where you are and to be thinking and feeling just as you are. So let's just try, as a simple practice for getting yourself to manifest what you would prefer, softening up the self-talk. Because running yourself into the ground in your mind or in your speech or in your comments is actually going to make the change harder. So instead of, I need to manifest, I'd prefer to be different. I'd prefer to change. I prefer to manifest something different for myself. Toxic traits. Look, you got Misha coming in as a support cat. He's here to help. These thought and behavior patterns that I tend to engage with don't make me feel very good, and they don't really contribute to my life and relationships in any really meaningful way. I'd like to start letting some of that go. You do not have toxic traits. You have understandable, though maladaptive perhaps, coping mechanisms. And those can change. It's a habit or an ingrained behavior, not a trait that's indicative to you. And you are most definitely not toxic or poisonous. I'm sure you are lovely, even if sometimes you're not behaving or thinking or feeling at your best. Now go away. And then crying emoji. That part of you that you're telling to go away is crying. Because likely this is the part of you that's been really, really hurt, and maybe is still really, really hurt. We don't want that part to go away. We want to give love to that part that maybe that part has never known. And once that happens consistently, you will see that part, those thoughts, and those behaviors change in the way that you most prefer. And that's a big undertaking. So I'm always a big proponent of therapy. And if you don't have access to it now, just keep it in mind and start engaging with supportive content.
If you are autistic, you have spiritual gifts. You are spiritually advanced.
All I'm touching on is the neurodivergency, mental health, and spirituality aspect of this. I am not even going to approach being spiritually advanced. That's a whole nother topic. People just love being so special! And while, yes, there are people who are further along in their spiritual journeys, people who have more expansive worldviews, people who are able to hold way more energetically than others, or who are more energetically sensitive than some other people. Yes, all of that exists. The word advanced just smacks of, I'm better than you. I'm just more advanced than these NPCs out here in the Matrix. No one gets to make blanket statements for all artistic people, neurodivergent people, people dealing with trauma, people dealing with mental health. And she put that little tag at the beginning, if it just doesn't resonate with you, just drop. Please stop. Stand by. Stop giving yourself little outs when you want to make these declarative statements. If you want to make them, stand by them. But no, just because you're autistic or have been through and survived trauma, because you have hypervigilance, because you have these things does not automatically make you more spiritually advanced. There are plenty of autistic people who are in fact atheist. And if you tried to feed them this line of garbage, they would laugh in your face. And the same kind of stuff often comes up with people who experience psychosis chronically, people who deal with things like schizophrenia. And some people, yes, are schizophrenic and still experience things like psychic ability, if you want to call it that. They have spiritual experiences that are completely independent from something that we would classify as a psychotic episode. Some of them feel like schizophrenia is not a thing, even if they have that diagnosis, and yes, they believe the entire state is a sign of being spiritual, or just simply a different way of being that would have been looked at as more of a shamanistic role in the past, while it is way more marginalized now. And it's up to the individual how they want to frame that for themselves. But no, just because you have a neurodivergency, it does not necessarily make you more or less spiritual than someone who is neurotypical and has more or less spiritual experience or practice than you do. And usually, if you have to say that you're more advanced, you're the least advanced. Please go watch that whole video. I'm begging you. Because there's nothing that's going to stop you from manifesting. Not low vibes, not the state of your current material condition, not your mental health state, nothing. If you're homeless and on the street, you can still manifest. And this goes into things like diet as well. Because there will be people out here trying to get you on some, you gotta be fully all raw vegan to be truly high vibe and be manifesting appropriately. Guess what? I manifested just fine eating McDonald's. I intentionally manifested just fine at ground zero of my mental health issues and trauma. I know people who are hoarders. They manifest just fine. Now, they might not be intentionally manifesting the things you want to manifest, but they are intentionally manifesting. There is no special state you have to be in to intentionally manifest. There may be states, both spiritual, psychological, and mental, emotional, material. I have no idea if I said those things a billion times repeating. I'm just gonna go ahead and let it slide. You might have preferences there. You might have a mood or a vibe preference. And that's perfectly fine if you prefer being there and prefer to manifest from that place. Do y'all really think that the universe, God, spirit, however you want to call it, is really out here going, now that person just ate some box mashed potatoes? No. I would say what's probably more important is, are you waking up every day doing your best, whatever that is, whatever your current ability and access is, to love and take care of yourself in the best way that you currently know how? Are you thankful and appreciative for those boxed mashed potatoes? Are you getting to share your McDonald's meal with friends and loved ones? And even if you're currently not able to do any of that, well, in my view, from my perspective, so it might not be yours, spirit, the universe, God, however you want to talk about it, if you are a theist, if you are a spiritual person, that is a being, that is a force, that is a presence of radical acceptance and non-judgment. So even if you are not in a place where you can do any of those things for yourself at the moment, you're not going to be punished. It's way more likely that you are going to be supported and gently encouraged, and in your own time. And there are plenty of magical and spiritual people who operate magically and spiritually just fine from a state of utter chaos. That is just what they do. It's what they love. And just because it looks one way to you, that doesn't mean that's how it is. I'm not done running my mouth about your house has to be clean to manifest. And I saw somebody come back with a rebuttal about, we're talking about manifesting money and things have to be a specific way, like there are universal principles that you have to be following. And what I'll say about that is, maybe there are universal principles that you have to be following, but not all of us have to follow those principles. Because as above, so below, right? So below we have things like laws, and so above we would also likewise have things like laws. But below, does everybody follow the law? And below, for everyone who doesn't follow the law, are they all prosecuted the same? Are all of them caught? Are all of them convicted? I didn't think so. So if you see it in the below, it is also fractally replicated in the above. Therefore, what you're calling spiritual law is only applicable for those who have to follow it, need to follow it, or want to follow it. It's only for those who it's still working for, or who haven't grown away from it, or haven't figured out any type of new ideas. None of those laws are set in stone. So if we're talking about manifesting money and your house having to be clean, can I think of anyone who manifests money just fine, has plenty of mental health issues, is a hoarder, does not have a clean house, and yet who still manages to manifest a significant amount of money every single time her YouTube royalties roll in? I sure can. Her name's Amber Lynn Reed, and she's violating all of your spiritual law. She's manifesting money just fine, not doing anything that you're doing. So like I said, if you have a preference, go for it. If something is working for you, go for it. Keep using it. But don't imagine that everyone has to be following these spiritual laws that you have to follow, because not everybody does.
Your fear of repelling people attracts the people that are not meant for you.
Sorry, I'm extremely sweaty. I just worked out. But she's absolutely right, and go watch her full TikTok. Because what she's talking about here, without naming it, is actually the state of engagement, which is way more powerful than the law of attraction. Because she is using the word attract here, you're attracting these people, but I want to elaborate a little bit on that. If you think about your materiality like your For You page, you will notice that lots of things show up in your For You page that you haven't necessarily attracted. It's just there, it's part of the phenomena, and you just skip over it, you don't engage with it. Then when you hit a piece of content that you want to engage with, you stop, you watch it, maybe you like it, maybe you comment. And then you start seeing more and more of that thing in your For You page. It's a feedback loop. Same thing with materiality, it just goes slower than what's on the internet. There's a lot that's going on within your material reality that you haven't necessarily attracted. But the more you engage with it, the more and more it's going to intrude into your reality because you're giving it energy. This is why we don't want to give racists attention. We want to give attention to the people who are dismantling racism, add our energy to that. That's how you solve problems with things like manifestation and the state of engagement. Because what is showing up in your materiality is not as important as what you are choosing to engage with consistently. This includes people, this includes content, this includes music, this includes food, this includes what you're reading, it includes what you're thinking about. And stuff like thoughts does get really tricky. And just know that you don't have to have some perfect content consumption lifestyle to manifest intentionally. It's just that she's really accurately talking about what the state of engagement is without specifically naming it, and demonstrating why it is very important for us to be aware of that and benefiting from using it accurately and appropriately. So don't worry necessarily about what you see and about what you're attracting. Concern yourself with what you are engaging with. That is what enhances certain things in your materiality, and it is what fixes them in place and makes them stronger, not the law of attraction.